मैम आपको तो अभी से नींद आ रही है।
स्टार्ट है।
हाँ चलो।
क्या मैम आज कितना टाइम लगाओगे सेशन में? पता क्या कल मेरी एनिवर्सरी भी है।
इतना मेकअप लग रहा है ना ये। इतना मेकअप लग रहा है ना ये। मैं क्या बताऊं? चलो लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड।
एंड अगेन लाइक MPSM मैम इज OBG, तो वो हमेशा रहेगा ही। OBG क्वेश्चन है या
Yes, definitely.
Yes, sir.
And the integration is a topic that could confuse you, but if you're clear with your basics,
But why is it that it's copper? Why is it not multi-loop? सब नाटक।
अभी तक वीडियो खत्म
स्पॉटर
ये तो चल रहा है ना।
अच्छा। Hello everybody, welcome back. So today we are going to have a very important discussion on an integrated topic from obstetrics and preventive health, which is on intrauterine devices. Particularly, we'll be talking about copper teas, and I have with me Dr. Shonali. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello ma'am, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So let's get started, Dr. Neha. And I have this device with me, and as the students will also note, that many times it is also a Viva question. You know, they hand you
Yes.
a contraceptive device, and they ask you what is it.
Exactly.
So can you, for the benefit of our students, help them identify the device?
Exactly. Before we start, since ma'am mentioned, this is one of the most important spotter question, and I remember it so well because during my OBG Viva, they particularly picked up this IUD and they asked me specifically that identify which generation IUD it is.
Yes.
So, starting with that only. So, as you all know, there are 3 generation of IUDs, right? First generation is the Lippes loop, and we also have Grafenberg ring. Lippes loop has already come as a NEET PG MCQ identification of the image, but they are inert, so we don't use it. And the second generation ones that we're going to talk today are the copper containing ones. Third generation are the hormonal ones. But like ma'am asked that why is it like which generation IUD it is. So I feel ma'am looking at something brown color over here, I think that it is second generation.
Yes. So this is when we say copper T, right? So the copper wire is wound around, as you can see here, the arms here, the T here. So this is with the copper containing device, right? And if you compare it with the Mirena, the image on the right, the hormone releasing ones, because it's very unlikely that you would have Lippes loop or Grafenberg's ring in your Viva table or spotters, because we're not using them anymore, the inert ones, right? So Mirena will have a cylinder, as you can see on the image on the right, a cylinder which is containing the drug that is levonorgestrel. Right, so levonorgestrel containing cylinder here in Mirena as compared to copper T here. So, Dr. Neha, another question that students are asked is, can you identify which type of copper T it is?
Yes, exactly. If you were able to answer that this is a second generation, automatically your next question is
like, let's just take it out and have a look at it. Why is which copper T is it?
Exactly. So if you were able to answer the first question, like ma'am said, automatically the second question pops up is which copper T it is. So now guys, as you can see over here, you have a thread, right? Now what is the color of the thread over here? The color of the thread is white. Now white color thread and straight T, the horizontal as well as vertical arms are completely straight with copper wire wound on them. This is nothing but one of the most important ones, copper T 380A. But what could you get confused with? The other image that you can see on the right, that is what? Multi-load, copper T 375. Now, if you can see here, you can see a blue color thread, right? In copper, and also the shape, like we study in our theories or when we teach you in classes also, it is what shape device? U-shaped. And the name here is U. So, this is multi-load with a blue color thread and U-shaped, and it is copper T 375.
And sometimes, you may forget the color of the wire. Don't get
Exactly.
scared. I mean, copper T380A. A, remember, is for the arms. So copper wire on the arms, you will find here in copper T380A, right? And if you go one step further, there's 375 and there's 380. What are these numbers, ma'am?
Exactly. Next, like we're proceeding in the form of a Viva or MCQ only. What are these numbers? So you all know the numbers stand for the surface area of the copper wire. So you should not forget surface area of copper wire. So that is 380 millimeter square of copper wire is wound on the stems. Over here it is 375.
Ma'am, does this have a bearing on the contraceptive efficacy or the lifespan, so to say, of the copper T device?
Yes. See, lifespan again is an important MCQ also, one of the patent. It's patent of all the exams. So copper T380A has a shelf life of 10 years and copper T375 has a shelf life of 5 years.
Yeah, so that means that it's like the biggest advantage of these intrauterine devices is that they are LARC, we say, short
Yes,
form,
yes.
long-acting reversible,
Reversible.
contraceptive. So it's a one-time fit solution, right? You get it fitted one time and then you can keep it in for 5 years for multi-load and 10 years for 388. This is the contraceptive efficacy or time period, right?
Yes. And since we are discussing this, guys, one of the other important things, particularly in PSM Vivas, I'm telling you, they will pick up and they will ask you that which copper Ts or which IUDs
Yeah.
are being provided freely by the
Yes.
Government of India till subcenter level. So please remember, you all know we have a basket of contraceptives, like it includes male condoms ho gaya, Nirodh ho gaya, it also includes Mala N. So from the IUDs, these are the two that are provided freely by the Government of India till the level of subcenters, copper T380A and copper T375.
So multi-loads are also
Yes,
coming
multi-load.
nowadays.
Again a potential MCQ.
All right.
Okay, meanwhile, let's put out a question. Now, you
Yeah.
all know mechanism of action is an important topic. So, we've brought a question for you. The contraceptive mechanism of action of IUDs is all except. Your options are foreign body reaction, inhibition of fertilization, unfavorable endometrium for implantation, thinning of fallopian tube. So, meanwhile, the audience answers. Ma'am, let's talk about the mechanism of action.
Yes. So if you look at the language of the question,
Yes.
particularly, they're asking you action of IUDs. Now, when they say IUDs, it's intrauterine devices. So devices would include copper T as
Yes.
well as the hormone-reducing
Hormonal.
ones like Mirena, for example.
Hmm.
And if specifically asking about copper T, then they would mention intrauterine copper-containing devices. So that would become IUCD. So sometimes students miss out on these finer prints in
Yes,
the question
exactly.
also. So as far as this question is concerned, as simple as anything, I mean, these contraceptive devices, none of the contraceptions we know work by, altering anything in the fallopian tube except for tubal sterilization, so to say. But so thinning of the fallopian tube is not a mechanism of action, and rest all are mechanism of action of IUDs, like foreign body reaction, inhibition of fertilization, and unfavorable endometrium for implantation would be the main mechanism of action for Mirena.
Yes.
The progesterone containing intrauterine devices.
Okay.
So let's go a little bit more into detail with the mechanism of action of intrauterine devices, particularly if you look at copper containing
Yes.
intrauterine devices.
So, like ma'am said, it enhances foreign body reaction, cellular response in endometrium, affects enzyme in uterus, alters cervical mucus, thus affecting sperm motility, capacitation, and survival. Nothing to do with the fallopian tubes.
Yes. So copper has basically two places to act on. One is the cervical mucus and thus affecting the sperm's action, and also on the endometrial lining. But yes, if you were to be asked whether the main mechanism of action of copper-containing intrauterine device is inhibition of fertilization versus inhibition of implantation, if you had to pick one, then what would be the answer?
Yes, very important. So, like we said, that inhibition of fertilization should be your answer rather than going for inhibition of implantation.
Right?
Particularly, only if Mirena is mentioned, you can go
Yeah, if Mirena is mentioned, then it is inhibition of implantation. So we can just write here Mirena, and
Yes.
you just add that point here. So as far as copper T is concerned, the main mechanism of action is inhibition of fertilization more as compared to inhibition of implantation. But when we look at Mirena, it is releasing progesterone. So it's a progesterone containing intrauterine device. It contains levonorgestrel. That is the type of progesterone it contains. So Mirena has got progesterone related actions.
Yes.
Right? Just like any other progesterone containing contraceptive. The only difference with Mirena is that now it's a, let's say, levonorgestrel containing intrauterine system. How we deliver the progesterone to the body, to the systemic body, that is the difference, right? So it's an intrauterine device releasing progesterone. So progesterone related effects like thinning of the endometrial lining under the effect of progesterone, it will make it unfavorable for implantation. That will be the main mechanism of action for Mirena. Another very, very important clinical correlation we derive from here. Let me ask you this question. Let us throw it out in the open also.
Yes.
Which among the two, Mirena or copper T, can be used as an emergency contraceptive? And the reason is behind the mechanism of action.
So I think copper T?
Yes, it is copper T. See, it acts by inhibition of fertilization.
Yes.
Right? And when introduced after unprotected sexual intercourse, and this one, copper T can be introduced with up to 5 days of unprotected sexual intercourse, and the copper ions start getting released immediately, and they have an immediate effect of, affecting the sperm motility, capacitation, survival, and therefore copper T, yes, can act as an emergency contraceptive also.
In fact, we also discussed this, like which is the best one. We
Yes,
say that
this is also a
copper T
question.
is the best emergency contraception.
Very effective.
Very effective. But then, which is like, which is being more used. So we all know it is iPill.
Yeah,
which is,
it's more convenient.
More convenient, more
counter.
accessible.
Yeah,
if you could
over
say.
the counter.
Over the counter.
And Mirena
is
not an emergency contraceptive. Remember that also. And Mirena can be used in the treatment of abnormal uterine bleeding also, again because of the progesterone related effects. So it is a mechanism by which we give progesterone for treatment of various conditions which are involved with abnormal uterine bleeding, whereas copper T will not be used for abnormal uterine bleeding. In fact, copper T causes, heavy bleeding, potentially can cause heavy bleeding.
Like we'll be discussing that also.
Side effect actually,
yes.
Right? So little bit of comparison also, let's draw.
And this one slide, ma'am has given you out a lot of MCQs basically, which you should remember. What is the main mechanism of action of, if particularly Mirena mentioned, then what is copper T as an emergency contraception, and other important uses
and
of
also
Mirena.
About the lifespan of Mirena.
Lifespan of Mirena, like we talk about 5 to 7 years basically. So
yeah, so the thing is that as far as the contraceptive efficacy of Mirena is concerned, the clinical practice is that as a contraceptive device, if it is being used as contraception, right, also, then 5 years is when the contraceptive efficacy is good. However, the drug keeps on getting released till 7 years and sometimes even up to 10 years. So for women who are using it for abnormal uterine bleeding treatment per se, they can continue using it beyond 5 years also. But contraceptive efficacy in clinical practice is still 5 years, right?
Okay, moving ahead.
What are the risks with intrauterine copper containing devices?
So now here, see, before we discuss this, let's go and handle it as an MCQ. So the question that ma'am keeps coming is that you are the medical officer of a PHC, and so a woman had got inserted a IUD at your center, a copper T at your center. Now she has come complaining that she's suffering from severe bleeding, heavy bleeding is happening, and she's requesting or she's asking you to take out the copper T. So what is it to be done? Now guys, as you all know that what is the most common side effect? So the most common side effect is bleeding. But is it to worry about? Do we have to worry about that bleeding?
See, if it is a carefully chosen case.
Yes.
And that is what is very, very important, that whenever we are introducing copper T, right, we carefully choose the ideal candidate for copper T insertion. She's properly counseled about the potential risks, right? And she expects what is to happen, right? So counseling is very, very important. That is what we talk about when we motivate a female to adopt a certain method of contraception, right?
Yes.
So it's very important that prior to insertion only these things have been taken into consideration. Other than that, yes, if a woman does come with the complaint of bleeding, you also have to take a proper history as to how severe is the bleeding, right? Also, you have to consider the fact that is this bleeding coming after a period of amenorrhea? Maybe failure of contraception could have resulted in a pregnancy. So after a thorough history, let's assume that there is no other complication, right? The bleeding is not too heavy. You can also give NSAIDs, or mefenamic acid or tranexamic acid can be prescribed during that bleeding episode, and usually 2 to 3 months of time is taken for things to settle down, because see, it is causing endometrial inflammation, it is causing the endometrial adjustment is also happening during this time. And if the bleeding is excessive, yes, medication can definitely be given in the form of NSAIDs, in the form of tranexamic acid during the episode of bleeding. It's not per se an indication for immediate removal.
Yes, what we're trying to tell you
device.
is don't immediately mark the answer as
removal of the device.
You need to reassure the woman, but you need to take a detailed history, reassure the woman, and she can be put on iron tablets also for 2 to 3 months.
Yes. That also is very,
if it's
very
not anything pathological, if it's just which we expect from a IUD, so in that case we need to reassure.
Yes.
And then you all know pain is the second most common side effect, but it is the most common cause of removal. So moving ahead, now we all know that with IUCD, what is associated, the risk of infections is also there. As you could see, ma'am, what's the most typical infection that a woman can acquire?
See, there are two things here. When we say infection and the risk of PID associated with these intrauterine copper-containing devices or intrauterine devices in general, yes, this is an MCQ point. The most typical infection associated with copper T is actinomyces infection. Having said that, right, actinomyces infection in general is not a common infection.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
In general, it is not a common infection. And most of the infections that happen with copper T insertion happen within the first 3 weeks of insertion. Because most of the time, these are ascending infections that have been introduced while inserting the copper T.
Yes.
Right. And that is why it is so important for aseptic precautions to be taken place, right? So most of the time it is a polymicrobial infection most commonly, right? Having said that, infections which tend to happen later, right? Much later, I mean, let's say 6 months down the line or a year down the line, she's been using copper T for quite some time now and it's inside, and now she's had infection, now she's having symptoms of PID, right? Then it is most likely an acquired sexually transmitted infection, not having to do with copper T per se. Right? So we need to keep that in mind also. So most of the time, if there is infection related to copper T, mostly it is going to be happening because of the introduction of infection during the timing of insertion of copper T.
So, pay attention to the question. Sometimes they can trick you with the duration, like what has been the duration of use. Like ma'am said that maybe after 6 months, it could be something else as well. So we need to focus on that also. Now, perforation of uterus, even on the hands of some trained people, there has been a couple of cases, but it's not very common. It's very rare.
It's less than 1 per 1,000, I would say. That is the quoted figure. And as far as perforation of the uterus is concerned, we must have heard this in clinical practice. It's funny sometimes, when patients are very, they kind of attribute whatever is happening to copper T. This happens in peripheral care centers a lot.
In our health centers also, when you would counsel the woman, नहीं वो सीधे आपको मुंह पे बोल देते थे, नहीं डॉक्टर साहब इसमें तो खून जाता है, इसमें तो दर्द होता है, इसमें तो मतलब
and एक और फनी सा हम सुनते हैं नॉर्थ इंडिया में कि दिमाग पे चढ़ जाती है. And I always used to wonder कि कहाँ कैसे चढ़ जाती है, किधर चढ़ जाती है, ये ऊपर चढ़ जाती है या क्या. And when I carefully question these women, so they're scared of perforation. Again, the stories percolate in community like this.
So we need health education.
Yes,
proper
sometimes perforation may have happened, तो उनको लगता है कि अरे ये तो कहीं चढ़ जाती है, ऊपर चढ़ जाती है, पेट में चली जाती है, कहीं चली जाती है,
खो जाती है,
गुम जाती है,
सकती है,
but most of the perforations also happen during the timing of insertion. most
Yeah.
of the perforations.
That's why it should be done by trained. And now, if we talk about subcenters also, so as you all know, in a subcenter, who can insert a copper device? Multipurpose worker, female or ANM. They have been trained. Remember, Ashas don't. Sometimes they get confused. Ashas ये नहीं करती. Ashas delivery नहीं करती, vaccine नहीं लगाती, copper T भी insert नहीं करती.
Yeah.
And lastly, spontaneous expulsion. So I think wrong size copper Ts, if inserted, could also result in that.
Actually, type of IUD से बहुत ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ता as far as expulsion is concerned, and most of these are standard sizes. And again, but what affects the risk of expulsion is, so the risk of spontaneous expulsion, if we say, is more in postpartum insertions as compared to interval insertion. So that difference is there, right?
So basically, summary, most common side effect bleeding, reassure. Second most common side effect pain, one of the most common causes of and most common cause of removal also. So guys, you've seen there's so many risks, right? So, and most of them originate during the time of insertion. So we have to be very careful when we are inserting a copper device. So ma'am, would be very nice if you could elaborate on how a copper T is exactly inserted.
Yeah, so before we go for the copper T insertion, the most important thing is that we've chosen an ideal candidate, right? We've made sure that there are no absolute contraindications. We've properly motivated, properly counseled the patient,
exactly.
done a thorough pelvic examination, a basic per speculum examination, a PV examination has been done. You've looked at the cervix, right? There's no cervical discharge, there's no cervicitis, there's no vaginitis, right? You've done a pelvic examination. You make sure that there is no active PID there, right? You take a thorough history also. She's not having any menorrhagia or severe congestive dysmenorrhea, things that could worsen with a copper T in place. So that is the first preparation, right? Now the other thing that you need to keep in mind is that if you look at this, we're talking about copper T 380A. Right now, first of all, we have to load this device inside the plunger. So this is the plunger here. So this is the plunger, this is the insertion tube, and this is the copper T inside, right? हमने इसको अभी ऐसे पकड़ा हुआ है.
Yes.
क्लिनिकल प्रैक्टिस में हम इसको ऐसे हाथ में नहीं पकड़ते, right? अब हम यहाँ पे पेशेंट पे तो दिखा नहीं रहे, लेकिन याद रखिएगा, when we are loading the device, right? It has to be done while it is still inside the sterile packaging it comes in, right? So we have to follow the no touch technique while loading the device. अब loading का क्या मतलब है? Loading का मतलब ये होता है कि that these two arms, right? इसमें device का अपना एक equipment भी आता है जिसकी help से हम उसको load कर सकते हैं. Equipment आता है, right? But abhi, for the purpose of explaining, what happens is that these two arms will also go inside this insertion tube.
Yeah.
Right? So this will be fully loaded. Right? Now all of this loading has to be done with no touch technique while the device is still inside the polythene packaging, the sterile packaging.
Still not out.
Yeah, it's still not out. So this is already loaded now, right? And under all sterile precautions, we have to introduce the speculum, make sure that there is no infection. After that, what we also do is measure the uterocervical length. Now, uterocervical length can be measured by a device which is called as the uterine sound. Many expert clinicians also use the pelvic examination as a guide for uterocervical length. But for undergraduate, please remember that it is good that you measure the uterocervical length. So you can see this flange here. So once you know the uterocervical length, you will adjust the location of the flange so that when you introduce it inside like this, when you're going through the cervix inside, right, this will be at the external os. Right. So we don't poke it, deeper. This is how we will avoid a perforation, right? So this is designed in that manner, right? So we insert it, right? After that, now these arms here, right? These are inside. अब मैं ये insert करने के बाद इन arms को बाहर करना.
Yes, they have to come out.
They have to come out.
Yes.
So we have to steady this and we have to pull at the outside wala sleeve like this. When you pull at it, withdrawal technique. The arms come out. And once the arms come out, then we can, this will be inside and this whole device can be pulled out. So this is the withdrawal technique, right? Yeah. And, or let's say the pull technique, you can remember it like that. Now, this is particularly for copper T380A because the arms have to be loaded inside the tube. But there are other devices like multi-load, in which the arms are already outside. and these arms are very rigid otherwise, right? But with multi-load, the arms are already outside. Then we don't need to pull. We just need to push it
Yeah,
in.
that's a U-shaped, if you
Yeah,
remember.
that was a U-shaped, right? If you remember. So then we only need to push it in, and it's a push technique, so to say. It's not pull. You're not withdrawing the plunger, right? So that is a key difference. For the undergraduate level, if you're really doing well in your Viva and you've answered all the rest of the questions, then you will be asked questions on insertion.
MCQ में भी आ जाएगा. No touch technique, withdrawal. Withdrawal is used for which IUD they can give you in the option.
Yeah.
So you should remember
And you
that.
see also all the copperties, they are designed with this, while inserting. Can you see this beak?
Yes.
This also helps in avoiding the perforation of the uterus.
Okay, so that's very informative. You could be asked, like we discussed, even in your MCQs. Just you can glance over here who's an ideal candidate. So who has born at least one child. Please remember, it's not advised in a nulliparous. Has no history of any pelvic disease. Normal menses. Willing to check the IUD tail. That's very, very important. She
Yeah.
should be motivated enough to check for this IUD tail.
See, where it is introduced inside, the uterus, we have to cut short this tail. Right? This whole thing cannot be hanging out inside
Yes.
the vagina. It becomes uncomfortable for the patient. So we cut it about 1 to 2 centimeters, and we give her this thread, also to feel, so that she knows what she has to feel for.
Exactly.
What do the threads feel like? She knows. So as long as she's feeling the threads down there, that means that the copperty is in place. Right.
Access to follow-up and treatment, that's okay, as is in a monogamous relationship. Of course, if somebody is having more sexual partners, chances of and not taking necessary precautions, chances of infection.
Yeah, the
Is
thing
more.
is that copperty will not provide protection against sexually transmitted
Yes.
infections. Condom does. So generally, like for example, with HIV patients also, if they want a very effective means of contraception, then we give them copperty along with condoms. We advise them to use condoms also during sexual intercourse to avoid giving it to their partners.
See, the question is on timing of insertion. Which of the following would not be an ideal time for copperty insertion in a woman?
Not an ideal time.
Yes. Option A, within 5 to 7 days of LMP. Option B, before 5 to 7 days from LMP. Option C, immediately after placental expulsion. Option D, within 48 hours postpartum. So let me rephrase it. If I ask you, can a copperty be inserted within 48 hours postpartum?
Yes, it can.
Yes. Can it be inserted immediately after placental expulsion?
Yes, it can.
But can it be inserted within 5 to 7 days of LMP?
Yes, it can.
So which is not an ideal time over here? Option B, which is before 5 to 7 days from LMP.
So the confusing thing here with students can find is in the language of how it is framed, right? Say within 5 to 7 days of LMP means that periods have started and coming 5 to 7 days. That is what within 5 to 7 days of LMP means. Before 5 to 7 days from LMP means that periods are expected, and prior to that,
Yes.
right? So understand here, we're putting a device inside the uterine cavity, right? So pregnancy should not be there. Any suspicion about pregnancy should not be there. Pregnancy would be a contraindication
Absolute
absolute contraindication for
Yes.
introducing the device. So basically, we have to introduce the device when we are reasonably certain that she cannot be and will not be pregnant. And post-menstrual, she's just had a periods, is the time that she is not going to be pregnant, right? And again, yes, within 5 to 7 days LMP, the cervix is also, softer. It's easier to introduce the device. And generally what we tend to see is, we do it, let's say about the 5th day or 6th or 7th day, because, by that time the bleeding is also subsiding, and it's
Woman is more comfortable.
Yeah, she's more comfortable in getting a device introduced like that. But anytime within the first 5 to 7 days of LMP, we can introduce, right? And it should not be introduced in the pre-menstrual period, so to say, because we never know, there could be a zygote traveling in the fallopian tube during that time, or trying to implant, and we introduce an intrauterine device there.
And postpartum, first 48 hours of delivery or after 6 weeks?
So let's just quickly go through the timing of insertion. We've already talked about interval. Now, again, the government of India, as you would agree to it, ma'am, is promoting these contraceptive devices like intrauterine devices for spacing of births also, right?
Yes.
So one of the time that the woman feels more motivated, as you say, right?
More receptive.
Yes, receptive is the word. More
the
receptive to agreeing for this kind of contraception is when she is in the delivery.
And you can counsel her.
So
she will agree that time.
So,
Obvious reasons she could.
So one timing is on the delivery table. So the placenta got expelled, and immediately after the delivery of the placenta, preferably within 10 minutes.
You need to have a consent. Please
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
that is very
Yeah,
important.
consent is important, and it has to be a written consent.
Written consent.
So post-placental is the timing, right? Now, if you miss that opportunity of introducing in the labor room, then the next opportunity comes in the ward before she is discharged. And that will be postpartum within 48 hours of delivery. If that opportunity is also missed, then we cannot introduce it
between 48 hours and 6 weeks.
Then after 6
after
weeks.
6 weeks.
Then after 6 weeks, it becomes like any other interval insertion. And post-abortal also. That means, let's say a woman had a first trimester abortion, and or she requested an MTP, and now she's willing for copper T insertion also. So MTP and copper T insertion can be done in the same sitting also. So post-abortal insertions can also be done.
Okay, so that's important. Moving ahead, we have absolute contraindications, which is again a question. What are the absolute and what are the relative contraindications? So as you can see over here.
See, the list is here. Let's just get the gist of this list.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so the gist of this list is that you're introducing a device inside the uterine cavity, right? So obviously, you don't want introduction of infection and you don't want perforation, right? So obviously speaking, for example, you have to first remember the timing of insertion. Supposing I were introducing postpartum in a woman and she already has signs and symptoms of puerperal sepsis, I won't insert. Absolute contraindication, right? Supposing I'm going for post-abortal insertion. She already has signs of, septic abortion, right? I will not insert, right? If I'm doing, let's say, for example, interval insertion, and she's already having evidence of active genital tract infection. That is what I told you, to make sure that there's no active infection. I will not introduce. Treat the infection first and then introduce it, right? Unexplained vaginal bleeding is again an absolute contraindication, right? Current PID, not past history of PID. Past history of PID is not an absolute contraindication. When we're saying absolute contraindication, we're talking about category 4.
Cannot be,
right? And genital tract malignancy. So GTN also you can remember along with genital tract malignancy, any genital tract malignancy, like for example, say cervix or SCA endometrium. Now the cancer itself has potential to perforate the uterus. Now you introduce a foreign device inside, and then the risk of perforation increases. GTN, invasive mole, right? So again, they have this potential to perforate the uterus. So you don't want to introduce in these situations. And commonsensically speaking, if there are anatomical abnormalities of the uterus and you're aware of it, the device will not be able to fit inside properly. So ill-fit device will be there, and then the chances of expulsion will be there, right? More pain will be there. So then you don't insert.
Yeah, and earlier, like one of the thing which the students usually have a doubt if it is ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah.
So
past history of ectopic is also not an absolute.
Earlier, maybe it was taken, but as of now,
all the recent
guidelines are
past
saying
history of ectopic not an absolute contraindication. HIV is definitely not a contraindication. Please remember that. And extra pointers for copper T, Wilson's disease is an absolute contraindication. Particularly
I think this was asked also.
Yeah, this was asked also. So Wilson's disease would be copper T, for copper T will be category 4. And since we're talking about contraindications to IUDs, if you just add Mirena to the mix, right? Again, by virtue of Mirena being an intrauterine device, all of these absolute contraindications apply.
Yes.
Okay. In addition, Mirena being a progesterone releasing device, an extra contraindication will be there, and that will be history of breast cancer.
So if they particularly mention Mirena, then you have
this
to
will
consider.
be added. This will be additional contraindication with Mirena, and this would be an additional contraindication with copper T.
Mirena out of all also has the least failure rate. Okay, so let's come to some clinical scenarios, guys. If you have a question, a woman has a history of copper T insertion, the threads are not seen, what is to be done?
Right. So the first thing that you do is obviously examine the woman. Okay, is it because she's not able to feel the thread? Sometimes the thread is cut too short. She's not able to feel it. Sometimes the thread is again hiding behind the this mucus and discharge or something. That's why she can't feel it. So just look first. Okay, do a per speculum examination. One thing can also happen. This thread can be rolled inside sometimes the endocervical canal. Right. It can be rolled inside the endocervical canal like this, and that's why woman is not able to feel. And then, just sweeping the endocervix with the cyto brush, we can just pull out this thread also. So that would be easy now. Why
Yeah.
go for any expensive
It could be
investigation?
there. You just have to
Look
hunt
for it. Yes, like
hunt
that.
for it.
Then you have to check whether it is, if by doing this also no thread comes out, you have to go for the ultrasound pelvis. On ultrasound pelvis, if you see the copper T inside the uterus, all good, everything fine. If on ultrasound the copper T is not seen in the uterus, then where could it be? Maybe it has perforated, gone inside the abdomen and pelvis, or it has been expelled already.
Yes.
So these are the two possibilities. So we go for X-ray abdomen and pelvis. Maybe it is expelled already, then you will not see the device at all. And if on X-ray abdomen and pelvis we see the device inside the abdomen pelvis, then laparoscopic removal, if needed, can be done. Okay.
This is important for MCQ per se.
Right. And another question sometimes students ask me, this confusion is that why we go for ultrasound pelvis? Why can't we go for X-ray abdomen and pelvis directly?
Ma'am, here I have a confusion that I think students might also have, that you said we go for ultrasound pelvis, right? Why is it that we don't go for an extra abdomen and pelvis?
Instead of an ultrasound
Yes,
pelvis.
instead of ultrasound.
Nowadays ultrasound is very easily available everywhere,
Of course,
right?
yes.
Now the other thing is that we have to see whether it is in the uterus or not. First thing is that, right? Now I'll show you these two images.
Okay.
See, this is the ultrasound image, as you can see. This is the outline of the uterus, and this is the endometrial cavity, and inside the cavity we can see the copper T. Okay, so copper T is inside the uterus. Now this can be almost known with certainty. Now you compare this X-ray film. Now tell me, where is this? Tell me, where is this? Is this inside the uterus? Is it in front of the uterus? Is it behind the uterus but outside the uterus? All I know that it is there inside the pelvis.
So very specifically, I think
ultrasound helps more. And yes, there were times in the peripheral healthcare centers when ultrasound is not available, let's say. Then X-ray abdomen pelvis is the thing that we do. And then we'll have to take the lateral films also with the uterine sound inside. See, the sound is also radio opaque, that will also be visible. This device is radio opaque, that will also be visible. And then vis-a-vis its location with the sound we have to compare. Right? So again, it becomes more cumbersome doing it like that. So ultrasound has replaced it as the first line investigation.
This again is an MCQ that could come.
Yeah.
So that was a very important clinical discussion here. Moving ahead, now we also have a question for you. Let's try if you could do it. A woman had a copper T inserted 3 months ago. Her youngest child is 6 months old and she's breastfeeding the baby. On routine checkup, the threads are not seen. On per-speculum examination, USG is done and shows that the copper T is in the correct position within the uterus. What advice do you give? Option A, reassure and leave the copper T in place. Option B, removal and reinsertion of copper T. Option C, hysteroscopic removal of copper T. Option D, removal of copper T after cervical dilatation. So,
see here, there is a history of woman inserted 3 months ago, right? So it's postpartum insertion. Basically, she's breastfeeding the baby also. So let's say we are good enough to assume that she wants this device. Until and unless it's explicitly said that she doesn't want this device anymore, right? So the first question arises is whether we should remove or should not remove. How we remove is another matter, right? So what advice do you give? It is basically in correct position within the uterus, right? When we were doing the previous flowchart, we said if the device is in the uterus, she's not able to feel threads. Doesn't matter if she's placed inside, if the device is inside the uterus, it can be left there.
Yes.
All we need to do is we need to reassure the woman and tell her that don't worry, okay, you're not feeling the threads. Sometimes the threads, get torn from here, right? Sometimes they're rolled inside. So it's fine, we can assure her and leave the copper T in place.
Suppose it was not in position.
Supposing it was not in position, then you would have to remove and reinsert and put it in a proper position. And also please remember that if it is not in proper position, then again we'll have to again go back to the previous flowchart as to where is it,
Yes.
right? So those things need to be kept in mind. So removal and reinsertion is not the answer. Hysteroscopic removal also not the answer. Removal after cervical dilatation not the answer. So let's just talk about the removal. The question of removal comes when, let's say for example, the woman is requesting for removal. She's come for removal and we want to find a way to remove, and threads are not there.
Yes, exactly.
Because it becomes very easy to pull out by pulling at the threads, right?
Okay, so ma'am, here, as we saw in the clinical question, that the property is in position, she wants to continue. So we have discussed that. Now, supposingly, the lifespan of the property is over. All right, and the property is visible. She wants to continue with the same method of contraception.
Yeah.
So can reinsertion be done in the same sitting?
In fact, reinsertion should be done in the same sitting. See, the situation that you're trying to point out is that she's using copper T. It's been 5 years or 10 years already. She wants to continue using the copper T.
Yes.
But the contraceptive efficacy lifespan is over. Okay. So we remove the copper T and reinsert in the same sitting. Why? Because the return of fertility after the removal is prompt. There's no hormonal suppression here that is working as a mechanism of action.
Yeah, so cannot delay it.
Yeah, okay. So cannot delay it. Removal, reinsertion, if needed, reinsertion has to be done in the same sitting.
Another question that comes, guys, if you could recollect, that she wants the copper T removal, but the biggest problem, the threads are not visible.
Like here.
Yes.
In this situation, if the situation were different, that means routine checkup, threads are not seen on per speculum examination, but she is requesting removal.
Yes.
If that would have been the question. She is requesting removal.
Yes.
And no threads are seen, what to do. Like I said, you can hook it out with the endocervical brush.
Look for it.
You may find the thread and you can pull out the thread.
Right.
The other thing is, sometimes we may also do it with a hook. There's a special hook that is designed. We can introduce the hook inside the endocervical canal and grab this T. And pull it.
Okay.
Sometimes we also use a curette for that purpose. However, a hook is better. So these will help us doing it in the OPD settings itself. If that also does not work, then we'll have to go with hysteroscopic removal.
Shiji, what we're trying to tell you is the potential clinical questions that could be framed. Once removal, threads not visible, threads are visible, what has to be done? Similarly, ma'am, now, of course, none of the contraceptive is 100% efficacious, right? What if she conceives?
Yes.
That is a question also. So let's go to discussing that.
Let's introduce it with a question.
Yes. So the question, guys, is a 30-year-old P2L2 woman is pregnant with copper T in C2. USG shows 6 weeks healthy intrauterine pregnancy.
On USG already done.
Done. On per speculum examination, copper T threads are seen. Okay. What is the next step? Now here, see,
let's go with the options. Let's answer.
Okay, so option A is
let's say we don't know anything about the flowchart that we're about to tell them. Let's just answer this question with common sense. Okay, copper T in situ history is there. 6 weeks of intrauterine pregnancy is there. So should we remove the copper T or should we directly go with MTP, or we continue the pregnancy with copper T in situ, or we remove with copper T and proceed with DNC? In this question, we don't know as of yet. Whether she wants to continue this pregnancy or not. Right. So offering her MTP without knowing, it's not right. I mean, we can't decide that for her. She's having failure of contraception. Legally, she's allowed to request for an MTP. But there's so many times that women will say, okay, now I've conceived, let me continue with this pregnancy.
And since ma'am mentioned also, you all know under MTP Act, also MTP is allowed in case of failure of contraception.
Right?
MTP is allowed up to 20 weeks.
Right. And continuing the pregnancy with copper T in situ would not be a very good idea. However, yes, there are times when, you have those pictures and images of baby coming out with holding copper T in hand. So it's not like pregnancy cannot not continue with copper T in situ, but it is fraught with risks like risks of infection, preterm labor, PPROM,
And
right?
even the chances of
Abortion,
spontaneous
yes,
abortion,
some
which
chances
we
of
have to
abortion
counsel the
about the
woman
woman.
for.
So yes, continuing pregnancy with copper T in situ, again, woman has to understand the risks involved and remove the copper T and proceed with DNC. See, whether we proceed with DNC or medical method of MTP or suction evacuation, that question will arise. Once she will say that,
I don't want
I
the
don't
child.
want the
Yes,
child.
I
So
don't.
right now, the most logical step to do would be to remove the copper T if the threads are visible, because threads are seen. Because whether she wants to continue the pregnancy, threads are seen, you remove. She can continue the pregnancy. If she wants MTP also, then also you remove the copper T and then you perform the MTP.
See, whatever we do, we have to conduct a counseling. We have to tell her every possible aspect, even with copper T in situ. If she has conceived, there are chances of spontaneous abortion, like ma'am said, preterm labor, a lot of things. Now, if she says she doesn't want the baby, then of course remove the copper T and we can opt for an MTP.
So for now, we can remove the copper T.
The question was such that didn't mention anything. So the safest thing is
to remove
the
because
copper
if
T.
she wants to continue, then she can decide. No, she can decide in a couple of days.
Yes.
She'll say, let me think it over. Then you remove the copper T. Then she can think it over whether she wants to continue or not. Because even when we are doing MTP, you see, if you're giving medical method, then the device needs to be removed and then the drugs have to be given.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's a very important point.
And if we are doing surgical MTP, then also the device needs to be removed and then we proceed with the suction evacuation. So again, we can do it in the same sitting also.
So let's take them to the table, ma'am.
Yeah, let's take them to the
pregnancy with copper T in situ. This will help you in a lot of questions.
So pregnancy with copper T in situ meaning, let's say woman came with a period of amenorrhea, UPT positive. First step is to do an ultrasound pelvis to make sure it is an intrauterine pregnancy because you have to rule out ectopic. Failure of contraceptive, particularly failure of copper T, there is again probability of ectopic pregnancy increases. All right. Now, if it is an undesired pregnancy, then again, like I said, MTP is an option allowed. If it's a desired pregnancy, then we remove the copper T if the threads are seen. If the threads are not seen,
that is one question.
Yeah, if the threads are not seen, then we have to see where the copper T is, right? So the copper T is here, the pregnancy is there. Where is the copper T? Is it above the os or is it lodged here in the os, right? So again, in this situation, the possibility is that if the copper T is in the cervix, we can remove after counseling. After counseling in the sense that we are introducing a device inside and again, when we remove, maybe abortion occurs, all right? If copper T is above the cervix, we don't remove. Because again, there will be high risk of complications, right? High risk of introducing infection and again perforation, causing an abortion. So we do not remove, but we counsel that what are the risks involved with continuing the pregnancy in these circumstances, right? And if copper T is not seen in the uterus, maybe it was expelled already, and that is why failure of contraception occurs. So that is a possibility, right?
This is one of the important things. But again, please counsel the woman properly before we take any action.
And when we're counseling the woman about one very important, this is an MCQ that was asked, that pregnancy with copper T in situ increases the risk of complications like PPROM, infection and abortion and preterm labor and everything, but does not increase the risk of congenital malformations in the baby.
Yes, this can come as a one-liner also. I don't think there has been any evidence of now which has said that the risk of congenital malformations
if the pregnancy were to continue with copper T in situ.
All right, so that we come to the end of the session, guys. We have tried to sum up copper T in the sense that what questions could come for your exam, because that is one of the most important things. And again, like MPSM, ma'am is OBG, so wo hamesha rahega hi OBG question hai ya.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, sir.
And the integration is such that also remember that when you're actually reading these, my only last takeaway, students find it difficult that, so many permutation combinations of clinical scenarios issues
yes.
can come, right?
It's a topic that could confuse.
Yeah,
the
it's a topic
students.
that could confuse you, but if you're clear with your basics, and the basics we're talking about is like ma'am said, the mechanism of action, the risks involved, right? If you know these basic principles regarding copper T insertion and usage, right, then making sense of the clinical flowcharts become easier.
Yes.
And we have given the outline of the flowcharts to you. With each outline, you have to keep in mind the logic behind it, and that is how you're going to remember it long term. And
Yeah.
again, do it with the help of MCQs, like we tried to explain it to you, right? And again, when there are flowcharts involved and when there are clinical scenarios involved, then many permutation combinations of scenarios could appear. But again, if you understand the flowchart with logic and don't just mug up the flowchart, that is going to be
Yeah.
the key.
It was only
point.
meant to strengthen your foundation via a question answer session. So we hope that it sincerely helps you.
So we'll sign off for now. This was a very good session, great interacting with you, ma'am, and hopefully
Same
we'll have
here.
more such OBG and PSM interactions lined up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.